Hey co-reporters, it's time for a recap of what happened on the season finale of Teen Mom 2. If you want to watch it in its entirety, I've got an affiliate link to the VPN that I use to watch this outside of Canada in the description box down below. It actually turns out that Lewis did end up showing to Brianna's baby daddy summit, but we never actually saw her talking to him or Devon about her concerns with them. But we did see Brianna talking to her sister Brittany about Chris giving his deposition in the midst of her and Kale's defamation lawsuit. And Brianna was very confident that Chris's deposition would help her win the case against Kale, which ultimately did end up happening. Of course, Brianna could not resist throwing a little bit more shade at Kale. She made a couple of mentions about how Kale refuses to show her actual real life whenever she's filming. Meanwhile, in West Virginia, Leah and Jaylan talk about Leah having 2 ex-husbands, and she explains being pressured to marry. The first one was, oh, you got pregnant, so now you have to get married, or you should not be having intercourse outside of marriage, etc., etc. Jaylan asked Leah how she feels about getting married a 3rd time and having more kids, and Leah says that she doesn't want documents involved in her relationships anymore, and it's something that she kind of realized after having been married twice. She doesn't really say anything about kids one way or the other, but she seems to not really at that moment be interested in getting married again. Back down south in Florida, Brianna is pissed off that Kale claimed that Brie had banged Chris. Kale went on her Instagram and made like a huge kind of like hint suggestion that Brianna had been hooking up with Chris. Brianna says that she talked to her lawyer, and her lawyer gave her permission to call Kale out for the lie and to call Kale a fat see you next Tuesday. And then Brie also says that she wants to buy Kale a treadmill, and I felt like that was way too much. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, things don't need to go to that level, in my personal opinion, when you are out there kind of like body shaming out other people for like their weight and stuff like that. And it's just like, Brie is not exactly the picture of good health herself. She's not what I would consider to be fit or in shape personally. And then we also saw her during Teen Mom Family Reunion, where she had to go run like 50 meters to get onto a jumping jamboree that the kids go on and jump. She did that and then she passed out. So it's like, okay, sis, calm it down a little bit, because this is just not a good look. I think it went from like funny, petty shade to just being outright nasty, and that I can't get down with. Speaking of Kale, she actually receives the treadmill in the mail from Brianna, and you know, like the Karen that she is, she thinks it's going to go towards her lawsuit with Brie, which was about defamation and not personal gifts. Sis, are you sure you're still, studying to get into law school? Because I don't know about that. Also worth noting, it kind of seemed like this was the only really like interesting part of Kale's storyline this episode, because she refused to film about anything. So maybe she should be thanking Brie after all for that at the very least. Listen, I'm not talking about Jade that much in this recap because it hasn't been interesting. It's just that constant conversation about will she or won't she with Sean and whatnot. Sean does come back from rehab. Then Ashley's another one that I'm not really going to be all that focused on in this recap, because again, it's just that constant cycle of marital problems with Bar that I'm just not really interested in. So Ashley, she buys Bar a new ring after he lost his old one. Then we go back to Kale, and she locks the producers out of her podcast office because she's upset about the treadmill lawsuit drama needing to be filmed. And that's her form of a protest. She does actually let the crew in at some point, and we see her and her friend eating takeout. And it just reminds me that this whole episode, maybe even this whole season, all these people have been doing is eating nothing but like takeout and junk food. I can't really recall seeing more than 2 or 3 home cooked meals in the span of this. Healthy home cooked meals, I should say. Ramen does not count to Jesus sisters. So I've got to say, guys, there was no point in Kale filming them because she refused to talk about Chris, his new kid. She refused to talk about the lawsuit that she started with Brianna. And then she refused to talk about her holidays either. So it's like, what do you want, Kale, from the team at this point? And I really didn't like her attitude about it. She was very like weird and like snooty and bitchy about it, and it just was not a good look for her. Then the producers show us Sean coming back home from rehab. I fast forwarded through it. I don't really care. And oh my God, here comes Jaylan begging Leah to get married after like 4 months of dating. He's very ridiculous and weird. If you guys have been keeping up with my recaps throughout the entire season, I've been laying out point by point, scene by scene, minute by minute, second by second, all of the red flags involved in this man. I was actually quite proud of Leah in this scene for standing her ground and like voicing her opinions clearly and stuff like that. It felt like Jaylan was trying to like talk over her and mansplain marriage to her. Like Leah has been married twice, Jaylan has been married 0 times. So I like really was taken aback by him saying, oh, like, it's gonna feel like him trying to tell her it's gonna feel a certain kind of way. I don't remember his exact words, but he's trying to tell her basically that like she doesn't want to get married because like she's kind of scared of like how it'll feel, but like she'll know like when she gets married how it feels. And I'm like, dude, she's been there, done that, bought a t-shirt, and you have not been there before. So why don't you calm it down? He was being very, very, very ridiculous. And I really did not appreciate the way that he kind of was seemingly talking down to Leah about her own feelings regarding marriage. At the end of the day, I hope that she can stick to her own principles and her own beliefs and not just go along with a ride because he has convinced her enough to. You know, if she feels like it, if her mind changes and that's what she wants to do, all the more power to her. But I hope that it's for her own genuine interest, you know, not just because he has kind of, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, bullied her into going along for the ride. Now we're back in Kale's podcasting studio and she's acting very cocky again and just being very difficult to film with as usual. Then she complains that nobody else has to talk about their baby daddies. And listen, Kale, you could have filmed about that 23-year-old that you just moved into your house. We want to know if he brought his gun with him or not, you know, but you don't want to film about that. The producers earlier wanted to ask you about your holidays. You did not want to film about that either. They wanted to talk to you about your lawsuit that does not involve your baby daddies. You didn't want to film about that either, you know, like, so what else could there be? We only got one scene from you about V and you guys is falling out. We could have gotten a resolution there a little bit more, like, that would have been interesting, but I guess you guys weren't interested in really delving into that. So I don't know what you expect them to work with at this point. And so Larry tells her, listen, like, I'm happy for your success and stuff, because she brags that she apparently makes more on the podcast than she does on the show. And he's like, I'm happy for your success, but don't forget that like this show is what made it possible. And then she flips him and everybody off. And it's like, girl, like, that is just not a good look. It's really going to turn off the people who do like you and do care for you, I imagine. But I digress. I didn't think it was a good note to leave off on personally. By the way, I got a question for you guys, because that's the end of the episode. Where was the preview for the reunion? Will there be a reunion this season? Because I really want to see Kale and Brie face off, now that we all know that Brie ultimately wound up winning the lawsuit and sending Kale a clown outfit. Like, I really want to know the fallout from that. It kind of seems like there's not going to be a reunion at this point. I'm not sure though, you guys. I haven't been like keeping too close of an eye. But yeah, I'm curious about that and why there wasn't really that much of a lead up to that new like hybrid show that they are about to launch. I'm curious, guys, will you be watching that hybrid show? Let me know why or why not as well in the comments section down below, and what you thought about this episode. And as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.